Alright, so now we're going to talk through some of the mounted bar settings. So we've got a few different types of mounted bars. What we're standing in front of here is a Deere Orthman stack fold bar. So some different settings we've got on here. We can see we've got a few different pin configurations. The first thing I'm going to touch on is bar height. We want to make sure that we have the proper bar height as we're going through the field. Proper bar height for our planters is going to be about 20 to 22 inches, and that's going to keep your parallel arms parallel to the ground, maybe even a little nose dive, but that's kind of going to be your sweet spot for that. The other thing that goes along with the bar height is going to be the levelness of your bar. What I like to do is set the planter down as we hit the field and maybe a bungee strap level to it, set it down, pull forward 10, 20 feet or so, get out and check that. Now some things that are going to impact that as far as our levelness is going to be our center link on our 3-point, also the gauge wheels on the back. If you have lift assist wheels on your mounted planter, those are going to also be affected or affect your levelness of your bar. You might have to go back there and add some cylinder stops or remove some cylinder stops to get those to get your bar level and at the right height. So just be aware as you make adjustments up here for your levelness. You're going to want to double check your bar height after you make some of those adjustments. The next thing we see up here is our pin configurations. So these two pins, this one has it locked solid. If we remove this one, it allows this wing to flex up but not down. If we remove both of these pins, then we'll get the full 8 degrees of flex up and down. The next thing, as we move over towards the edge of the wing a little bit, is on these newer bars we have this hydraulic locking mechanism. So when we unfold the wings, it's going to lock this in place. That way our wing doesn't start to ride up as we're going through the field. On some of your older bars, we've got this pin here, and on this one too, you can lock this rigid if you want to. If you're having issues with this locking and you're on a really flat field, you can lock that in rigid. Otherwise, on some of the older bars, there is a spot here to go in and lock this solid. So it locks that wing down, still allows it to flex, but it just locks it down in place. That way you're able to lock it down, like I said, not let it ride up. That way you can achieve your consistent planting depth. Moving along the edge of this bar here, we're going to come out to the wing. As you can see, this one does not have any weights on here. If you don't have markers, we usually encourage you guys to add a weight bracket out here. If you don't have markers, usually what we say is 4 suitcase weights on each wing is going to replace the weight of that marker. Especially with these machines with hydraulic downforce, having that downforce out here at the wing is pretty helpful and beneficial to holding these row units in the ground. We'll continue to move around the bar. So one of the things to keep in mind as we talk about bar height and the levelness of your ride is going to be these gauge wheels. Now, one thing that's really important is to go across and make sure that you have consistent tire pressure across these. That way we're not having one wing settling down because we got a flat tire or something. It's a good idea to check those before and periodically during the season. Another thing that I like to do is measure these threads on here and make sure that we're getting the same threads across all these. Now there is going to be one of these gauge wheels that does float, so we'll take a walk over here and look at that one, and I'll talk through about why that is. As we get over here, we can see that this gauge wheel does float. Well, this one doesn't. It will be floated. The reason for that being is we have the wheel motion sensor on here. What this does, it allows one of the components that allows the planter to plant. So what this planter is going to be looking for is wheel motion back here. We want to see that the height sensors are showing down, and then it wants to see speed from the tractor. So some common issues that arise from this is this has a tone wheel back under here, and it's filled with slots. And this is a Hall effect sensor, so there's a sensor butted up right against that. What that's looking for is just all the slots in there. So some common things that happen is those slots will get filled with corn stalks and mud, and you might see your wheel angle or your wheel motion sensor go to inactive. At that point, you might want to have someone come back here and spin this tire with the planter in the raised position, and you can watch on the monitor and make sure that that is in fact going to active. One of the other components that I talked about back here is the height sensors, and they are going to be on the parallel arms of the row units, on a couple of the row units across the planter. On these mounted planters, they are just a push button style, so it's either up or down. Some guys, if you have some rolling terrain or terraces that you plan over, every once in a while the row unit with that height sensor is going to bottom out and it's going to turn the whole planter off. Some ways around that are if we can get a mercury switch. What I like to do is run that down to these and then put it on the 3-point of the tractor. Then we can adjust that switch a little bit, and that way you can make some adjustments, let your 3-point ride up a little bit more, and not turn the planter off as you're going over maybe some steep terrain. As we talked a little bit earlier before, this planter does have the hydraulic compressor on here. If you're having any issues with the hydraulic or the pneumatic components, these are all the valves on here. On the back side is where we can manually push air to those if we have air in our tank. Pretty self-explanatory. All the green and yellow ones are going to be going to our row cleaners. These black ones are controlling our pneumatic closing wheels. The last thing I want to talk about, as we touched on a little bit before in our apps session, these new electric drive planters, they do come available, or we can put it on for Connect Mobile and the Planter Plus app to do the mobile row unit runoff. One thing to look for is this antenna with there's an antenna up here and it's got a yellow strap around the top of it. If you have that antenna on your planter, it's probably going to be equipped with our WDS or wireless data server. That allows you to run the Connect mobile app and get you some additional planting layers. So with that, I think that's about all we had to cover here this afternoon with our bar. So if you guys have any questions, please be sure to let me know.